Hey TechnoStuds, in prior videos we talked a lot about setting up Cisco equipment as servers. That is, Cisco devices handing out IP addresses and information to the clients. But there are times when you want the Cisco device itself to be a client and be able to get an IP address from a server. So let's talk about how to set up Cisco devices to be DHCP clients and get IP addresses from other devices. Let's go over a quick scenario to see how some of this could get set up. Right here we have a network here that, let's say we want to connect out to the outside world. So we're going to connect to some sort of ISP router that's out there. But what they may do is they may say, we are going to give you a IP address, and it might be static or it might be through some sort of dynamic host configuration protocol or Slack or something to that effect here on the outside world. So what we need to do is we need to get onto that device to configure it so it can accept an IP address or be able to auto-configure an IP address. So let's look at the configuration of that. All right, I'm on switch 1, and what I need to do is I need to get onto the interface that's going to accept the IP address. So what in this scenario right here, if you recall, I'll bring up my network diagram here. If you recall, I'm on this switch right here, and I have a connection between here and the router. And let's say I want that connection to be set up for some sort of auto configuration or some sort of DHCP. So that interface right there is interface VLAN 9. So that's the one that I'm going to configure here, is interface VLAN 9. So let's get into that interface. I'm going to get into the global configuration mode, interface VLAN 9. And the symbol, it's actually pretty easy to set up, IP address DHCP. And then what that does is that sets up the interface to accept an IPv4 address via DHCP. So then the similar command is IPv6 address DHCP. And now we'll accept a IPv6 address from a DHCP server. Now we know that typically we don't want to, or we want to try to avoid using DHCP servers for we prefer, I'll put it that way, we prefer using Slack for this interface instead. So the command for using Slack would be IPv6 address autoconfig. And now that's set up for it. So some of the show commands that we would use for troubleshooting or to take a look at the settings here are going to be kind of boring because we don't have a DHCP server on the other side. But what I can do is just run through a couple of the commands that I'd use to take a look at the information, such as show IP interface, and then we're taking a look at VLAN 9, and then I could pick out different pieces of information. We can see internet address will be negotiated versus DHCP, so that's interesting there. And then what we can do is let's do a show IPv6 DHCP interface, and you can see once again I don't have a lot of information here because nothing has been set on here, but I can also do a binding and see some information about the binding. And then I can also do a show IPv6 interface brief. And as you know, in some of my other videos, that this is one of my favorites here, so we can see some information here, in which case we see some of the statically assigned stuff or the auto configuration stuff. So there you have it. So there is just some show commands that to do this, but once again this would be to set up so that way we could set up one of the interfaces to receive a dynamic IP address or auto configure that interface so we can connect it into maybe an internet service provider or maybe some other device that we don't have control over, or perhaps this is just the way we want to dynamically set up our network.